I'm Alex Jones. We're live on this Friday worldwide broadcast, ladies and gentlemen. And when we return, we're going to break down the huge developments on the TPP front. It's in trouble. The EU is in trouble. A lot of good news as the global fascist empire takes more serious blows from the worldwide rebellion against tyranny. I'm Alex Jones. You have found the tip of the spear for the fight for human liberty. Infowars.com. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. On this Friday, already the 5th day of whatever month it is in this insane asylum that we live in. Because it doesn't even matter what month or what year it is here inside the planetary world government, where the tyranny and the oppression and the ignorance just intensifies by the moment. It's television that's killing society. The world is absolutely filled with just non-productive, mindless chatter and behavior and people frittering away their lives, pretending that they're school teachers, pretending they're parents, pretending they're senators, pretending they're police officers, pretending they're artists, pretending they're intellectuals, pretending they're informed, pretending they've got their head screwed on straight, while meanwhile, organized anti-human systems are being developed and deployed against humanity. There is a lot of positive news, though, at the same time that we're going to be breaking down today on this worldwide broadcast. We have Lord Monckton joining us for 30 minutes at the start of the hour, one of the main fighters of the EU and the founder of UKIP, fastest growing party in England, UK-wide, and also in much of Europe. And he's an expert on EU tyranny and what's happening currently with the European Union, and that's tied into the rest of the trilateral global government program, the Asia Union and the American Union. EU weighs unprecedented reform as Britain threatens to leave. That's the Associated Press today. Germany's Merkel open to EU treaty changes for UK. BBC. We're going to be drilling down into what this means, but here's what's happened. The UK was brought in decades ago without a vote through stealth political actions into the unelected draconian European Union that at the time wasn't even announcing itself as a European Union and was actually a, quote, trade deal that was negotiated in secret and that England was then a signatory to. And we'll go over the years, when it happened, how it was implemented with Lord Monckton, who was there in the Thatcher government as her chief advisor, stopping it, and then as soon as she left office, they were able to sneak it through. So he was there when history was happening. Now, you may be saying this sounds like deja vu, because that's what the TPP is for the United States. And that's what NAFTA and GATT and all these things are these so-called trade agreements that are really global government agreements bringing us under private corporate globalist boards. And so this is really good news, because even if they ram the TPP through, which is in big trouble right now, it shows how decades later, as the public is informed of how they've lost their sovereignty and how roughly 83% of British and UK laws from Scotland to Ireland are made by the European Union itself. And then you notice just a few years ago, the EU actually officially just took Ireland over when it became a member. And then notice what happened to their economy. Suddenly they were signed on to all this debt that wasn't theirs. They conquer you through economic conquest. So this is such a huge time to be alive, because Bilderberg is a microcosm of this. The people that run Bilderberg, since the 1940s, they officially called it Bilderberg in 1954, when they met in Oosterbeek, Holland at the Bilderberg Hotel. They are the royalty. They are the robber barons of Europe and the United States. They are what you could call Hydra or Spectre. They are the bad guys. And their agenda can only operate in secret. If there's ever a debate about them, if there's ever a discussion about private corporate individuals and combines controlling government and controlling the issuance of currency and credit and controlling interest rates and controlling trade and borders and military and sovereignty and immigration, it's game over, because even the stupidest 75 IQ person out there who might be able to tie their shoelaces, who might be able to find their butt at high noon with both hands, they can understand that the decisions are being made by people who aren't from this country or aren't from their country and who do not have their best interest at heart. That is the simple fact in all of this. And so when you see the trilateral plan of an Asian Union, American Union, EU Union, all those unions then merging together through trade deals, when they were set up as trade deals, once you have a debate about that, the whole thing starts falling apart. The whole thing becomes crystal clear as a dictatorial, centralized despotism, no matter what name or whatever word you give it. And so you can see June 5th, 2015, as a very dark time for the world, where a lot of evil is coming out of the closet, emerging out of the waves, and attacking like the Hydra, like the Leviathan. But at the same time, it's an incredibly positive time, because the world is awakening and saying no, and the Tory party had to act like UKIP, or they would have lost the election. UKIP gained a lot of seats. It's like a Ron Paul-style party. They're listeners of this show. They're guests of this show. They understand what's going on. Their fight is our fight. Our fight is their fight. We're all in the same boat. Sovereign nations being taken over by the globalists. We're all allied against this. And the Tories, as we said last year before the election and this year, began to act like UKIP and said, okay, we'll control the borders. Okay, we'll cut the taxes. Okay, we will get us out of the EU, or at least allow you to have a vote. The British and the rest of the people in the UK never had a chance to even vote on whether they want to be part of the EU. We don't get a chance to have a vote here, do we? We don't get to even see the TPP. The Congress just votes. The House is about to vote. The Senate voted to just give the president unlimited power to sign on to whatever he wants. I mean, that is so sensational, off the chart, over the top, ridiculous. Totally ridiculous that would be happening. 2 members of Boehner's leadership team openly refuse to admit if they've read Obama Trade. That's the TPP. So this is all a bunch of criminals in suits trying to act like what they're doing is normal and kosher and acceptable and not a problem. They're hiding it in plain view. We're blowing the whistle. And just as they said Bilderberg didn't exist 60 years ago, 50 years ago, 40, 30, 20, in the last 10 years, they've been forced to admit it exists. They've been forced to admit much of their agenda. And guess what? It's a global government, carbon tax, open border, technological technocracy that ends human liberty, ends freedom, ends sovereignty, and forces you to eat Monsanto GMO, basically. And taxes the internet and takes over free speech. I mean, it's sick. We're exposing the entire globalist hierarchy. I just spent, if you just tuned in, 12 minutes trying to break down something that's really simple. A private, global, fascist, eugenics-based world government that started the Nazi Party, started the Communist Party, is so evil, they've just committed purely to the most wicked darkness you can imagine. They're purists. These bloodthirsty purists, based out of the British Empire, allied with the United States and the robber barons, created a system of culture control about 160 years ago and deployed the plan and have pretty much taken the planet over. And they discovered DNA, and they invented computers and biometrics. Galton in the 1860s said, we're going to create machines to track everyone. We're going to discover how humans operate. We're going to master it. We're going to bring in a planetary government. And we're going to remove all of the dumb people from the earth and create a utopia. And the dominant empire of the world adopted that, the British Empire, the greatest empire this world's ever seen, with all its administrative manipulations and military power. And now that philosophy, that system, that logic has permeated into a private global banking cartel, because the British don't really run it today, they're just part of it, and has merged with the military-industrial complex and the technological elite that Eisenhower spoke of, and they're on a power trip. They're racing to get life extension. They're allowing all their new drugs and surgeries to be tested on the general public to perfect them for themselves. That is the practice of medicine, is it not? It's why it's called practice. And they are effectively anesthetizing and dumbing down the public to come in for the big win. Ragtag forces are aware of this around the world. The chemicals in the food and water, the biological weapon engineering in the food. We can see the diseases skyrocketing. We can see the IQs plunging. We can read the globalist own battle plans and see they're carrying it out. And we're just here desperately trying to warn people. All being laughed at by the controlled right and controlled left. But as Christ said, forgive them, they know not what they do. The mid-level minions. The good news is, because of fighters like Nigel Farage and Lord Monckton 30 years ago that founded UKIP, they've put so much pressure on the UK that they are threatening to leave the EU if national sovereignty is not at least partially returned to the UK. That's a big first step. That's in the BBC and the Associated Press today. Germany's Merkel opened the EU treaty change for UK. EU weighs unprecedented reform as Britain threatens to leave. AP. And that ties into this headline. TPP begins to unravel as Obama launches final push for votes. Please just tell us what is in TPP. I'm going to read over some of this article. So humanity's putting up a fight. I mean, just 10 years ago, you'd tell people that there were, G7s and G20s, and you'd tell people that there were global elites meeting in secret, and the public had been taught there were no robber barons, there were no powerful men and women who wanted more power. I mean, that's like saying there is no sun that comes up in the morning. The public had been taught that government is pure goodness, and so are corporations, and nothing bad goes on. There's no secret groups, so just stick your head in the sand and go to sleep and watch your favorite TV show. We've now progressed to the point where 20 years ago, maybe 1 out of 50 people knew the Federal Reserve was private and European-owned. I mean, I remember hearing a conservative talk show host 20 years ago say the Council on Foreign Relations didn't exist. They would get on air and say, that kook, Alex Jones, says a thing called the CFR runs everything. I didn't say it ran everything. Set up by British intelligence publicly in 1922 at Pratt House in New York City, with the express goal of establishing British Empire rule over the continental United States through infiltration of government and working with U.S. robber barons. Did a pretty good job. But see, now people know the Council on Foreign Relations exists. The U.S. branch of the Royal Institute of